College Football Live is presented by Dr. Pepper.
Hello, everybody. Happy to have you with us. I'm Wendy Nix with Joey Galloway and Greg McElroy. We start this afternoon with the ongoing way in which we navigate through a worldwide pandemic. And this breaking news just a few minutes ago, the University of Florida has ceased all team activities. This, of course, due to COVID. 5 players testing positive. Here's a statement from the athletic director just a few moments ago. Head coach Dan Mullen has been in communication with football players and their parents, and I have had conversations with the Southeastern Conference office. Last week's opponent, Texas A&M, and this week's opponent, LSU. These circumstances will be reevaluated by the University of Florida Health and the athletic department's sports medicine staff on Wednesday. And guys, this is just a sign of the times. Joey, I'll start with you. Certainly not great news for all of college football and bad news for the Gators.
It really is, but this is what we're dealing with right now. We're seeing NFL games moved around and played on different days like a Tuesday or being canceled and shut down. And we've seen other colleges have to postpone or cancel games. So this is just part of what we're dealing with, and it is just now hitting the University of Florida. So it's sort of like you expect a lot of schools to go through this. It's just this is the week that Florida's going through this.
Yeah, and it's standard. I mean, we just have to be comfortable with the fact that there will be positive tests, but we have to also mitigate the spread. And I think if you look at Florida, this is a precautionary measure out of an abundance of caution, and they have done a great job of, I think, identifying issues within their own program and saying, hey, look, we got to figure this out, and we cannot provide a safe environment at this moment to tee it up in practice here on a Tuesday. So I think it's good that they talk with Texas A&M, they talk with the SEC, and of course talk with the opponent for Saturday being LSU. But it is troubling, it is problematic, but it is also par for the course here in 2020, knowing the challenges this season presents.
Well, there's no question. If we decided to play college football, this was going to be a part of it, and it continues. It's interesting, of course, that Florida had to be in contact with Texas A&M. That is their previous opponent. So what's also interesting is the timing of this. After Saturday's loss at Texas A&M, Dan Mullen said he absolutely wanted to see a full house. 90,000 fans he hoped for in the Swamp this Saturday when the Gators were to host LSU. Mullen doubled down on those comments when asked to clarify on Monday.
I mean, but do you understand? Do you get 90,000 people with or without masks, breathing on top of each other for 4 hours, how that would be a bad
thing? I think Texas A&M, actually, they created a great atmosphere at the game, created an exciting atmosphere, I thought they did a great job of doing that. Like I said, I haven't talked to people because I've been really focused on trying to beat LSU. Whatever our government officials all say and what everybody does for the game, what we do need to do is, however many people they allow into the stadium, we need to try to work as hard as we can, all the Gator fans and all of us, to create the best game day atmosphere we can.
Greg, there is no question that you can understand Coach Mullen's sentiment. Of course he wants to have fans in the stands. Of course he'd like to see the Swamp packed. But it is tough timing here. This was yesterday, and really just about 24 hours later, we see all of team activities shut down for Florida.
Yeah, it's a tough look, and the timing is unfortunate for Dan Mullen. But really, when you look at it, he's not necessarily talking about, the spread and all that stuff. He's talking about providing a difficult environment for the opposition. And there's not going to be 90,000 fans in the Swamp. It's not going to happen. That wasn't realistic. And last weekend when he was at Texas A&M, I was there. There were 27,000 Texas A&M fans, and it was a crazy and chaotic atmosphere that was actually really difficult for the Florida Gators to navigate through. They couldn't communicate. They had to adjust their snap count. They had all types of pre-snap penalties and issues with their communication and their alignment. So I think that's all he was playing on was just, hey, we need to make it difficult for the road team in this particular situation. I don't think he was necessarily trying to refer to, creating a super spreader event or anything like that. That would be, I think, a little insensitive. And, I'd like to get a little more clarity from him to know exactly what the intents of his comments were.
It's pretty funny, Greg. His intentions were to pack a stadium. And so we've had this conversation before when it came down to Coach Ogeron and what he said earlier in the season. and you sort of took the same stance with, well, we don't really know what their intentions are. We know what their intentions are. Their intentions are to pack stadiums, to play football, and they're not concerned with COVID. All I'm saying about this situation is the same thing I said about Coach O's situation. When we're looking to leadership, when we're looking to coaches, we're looking to decision makers, these guys have to be smarter. That is a terrible look by him to say that. And then to have to shut down his program because of COVID lets you know just how out of bounds that statement is. And we're talking about football once again. And so now we're talking about not just football, but stands. Like, where does that stop? Like, when does COVID become more important to these coaches than playing football, putting people at risk? It's one thing to do the right thing with your testing, with your protocols. It's another when you start making stupid statements that absolutely make it sound like this thing is not for real, it's not serious, and all these coaches care about is packed stadiums and winning football games. Once again, that is a terrible look for an SEC coach.
Well, Joey, I agree with the tough timing. I do understand the sentiment, but you're right. And again, if you're just joining us, Florida forced to pause all athletic activities for the time being after 5 players test positive for COVID. We'll switch gears now, though, and take a look at our current college football rankings. This is brought to you by AT&T 5G. And again, still at the top, the Clemson Tigers. Again, if we can put that up there, we'll take a look. Clemson at the top. The ACC has 3 teams in the top 5 for the first time in AP poll history, Clemson leading the way. The SEC, though, Georgia and Alabama ranked 2nd and 3rd. One of those 2 teams, though, will fall to the other when they play each other on Saturday. And speaking of the number 2 team in the nation, Alabama does stay undefeated by beating Ole Miss on Saturday. Defense, however, apparently optional. The 2 teams combined for 111 points, the most in a regulation game between SEC teams in conference history. There were also nearly 1,400 yards of combined offense in that game, which was good, by the way, for another SEC record. It has been tough sledding for the Tide defense so far this season, allowing an average over 450 yards of offense and 30 points per game. And if that pace were to continue, it would be the most points in yards per game given up by an Alabama defense in the Nick Saban era. The question then becomes, is the issue more with the play calling or the execution?
I don't think, that the call is necessarily the issue. I think the execution of the call has been the issue. Sometimes we coach players for what we want them to be, but we really need to coach them for what they are. When I say that, I'm talking about how much experience do they have, how much can they handle, how much can they execute. So if the players are misexecuting, that's not a good thing from a coaching standpoint, because that means we have to do a better job of teaching them, or make sure we're not trying to teach them too much so they go out there and can't perform well with confidence and make the plays that we'd like for them to make.
But Greg, offense isn't an issue, and I don't expect that it will be going forward for the Tide. But as they get deeper into the season and play tougher opponents, that defense might be. What is the solution here, in your opinion?
Tackle? Let's start there. I mean, fundamentals of tackling and getting off blocks, because it's really that simple. Alabama obviously has a remarkable amount of talent. They have a lot of athleticism in their front seven. However, sometimes when you have athleticism like Alabama does, you have a tendency to occasionally play out of control. Guys aren't necessarily doing a great job of being mindful of the scheme that they're being asked to be in. So they're using that athleticism. And honestly, we got to also give credit to Ole Miss, who took advantage of Alabama's aggressiveness and won one-on-one matchups and did a great job with yards after catch throughout the course of the 60-minute game. Is this a problem for Alabama? Yes, it is. But it's also something that can be improved week in and week out, as long as the guys understand their role within the scheme. Right now, there's too many individual guys that are trying to make plays on the ball that are being too aggressive, and as a result, that aggressiveness is being used against them.
It was interesting watching that game, because the aggressiveness for Alabama's defense usually causes issues for the opposing offense. And in this case, and they won't see many offenses like Lane Kiffin and what Matt Corral was able to do with this Ole Miss offense, a lot of moving parts. And so the aggressiveness was almost, you could see like guys were like, I really want to be aggressive, but I'm not 100% sure if I should run in there and hit this guy or if I should wait till this guy comes across here. And so when you watched it, you've seen the athleticism, you've seen guys flying around. They almost looked like they weren't sure where the ball was coming from, where it was going. And I agree with you, Greg. Give Ole Miss a lot of credit. One thing they didn't do is turn the football over. And they didn't have a lot of penalties. And so usually when you play an Alabama team and they start being aggressive and they're blitzing and they're moving piece, offenses start to make mistakes. And we see turnovers and we see defense scores for Alabama. Ole Miss didn't do that. And so it came. If we can't force this offense to make a mistake and they're going to be able to move the ball, then we just have to outscore them. And it's rare to see an Alabama defense get in one of those games.
Well, it was a shootout. There was no question. I'm not sure, I don't know if the defense needed to get off the bus. But anyway, it will be an interesting matchup on Saturday when what you'll be facing when the Tide play Georgia is strength on strength. And the reason, of course, is that you've got a solid defense and a solid offense. The Tide averaging an FBS best 51 points per game. Georgia's defense, though, allowing just 12.3 per game. So in that sense, something's got to give. And how about the run game? Bama's Najee Harris racked up five rushing touchdowns last week. So what will be the answer here, Greg? Which wins out, and how can that Georgia defense slow down the Tide putting points on the board?
Well, I think the biggest thing is they have to do a great job of limiting Najee Harris. Najee Harris last week against Ole Miss did a wonderful job getting on the perimeter, making guys miss, being physical, jumping over guys in some cases. So he was outstanding at the running back spot. So they have to neutralize him to the best of their ability. But it really goes beyond just stopping the run. Once you stop the run, you have to be really cognizant of not being taken advantage of one-on-one coverage in the play-action pass. That's what Mac Jones done an amazing job of so far. Early in this season, he has been so accurate down the field. And once you get those wide receivers, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Mechie, once you get those guys in space, it's over. Because those guys with the ball in their hands will not be brought down in the open field. So they have to neutralize the run as best they can with their front seven and then cover down in the back end, which is insanely difficult knowing how explosive and creative those receivers are with the ball in their hands, Joey.
Greg, and you got to not just neutralize the run with your front seven. You have to put pressure on the run with your front four. Because the problem when you play an Alabama offense, the way they're rolling, the way they can run it, and the way they can throw it, you can't have your linebackers or one of your safeties in a hurry to get in the box or in a hurry to help with the run. So your front four becomes the key, because if they can dominate up front, it allows you to leave seven in the back. And sometimes you need seven in coverage when you're going against an offense the way Alabama's throwing it around. So those two linebackers are key. If they have to come downhill all game long, you know eventually Alabama's going to hit them with a play-action pass that's going to go over their heads. And if you got to bring the safety down to create that seventh or eighth guy in the box, you have no shot with guys like Waddle and Smith and Mechie on the outside. You know, you got to pick your poison, but you better pick it with your front four dominating the football game.
Yeah, you got to bend and not break in this one. It seems like Alabama can move the ball almost at will at times. But again, Georgia's defense getting the job done so far. As we take a look at our Capital One fan vote, both of these teams, they play each other, so we will not remain undefeated. That's just how it works. So who you got? According to ESPN's FPI, Alabama has a 61% chance to beat Georgia. Make sure you go to twitter.com/SportsCenter to check out this week's Capital One fan vote. Fellas, Joey, I'll start with you. Who you got in this one?
I'm going Alabama, it's in large part due to just the confidence that I have in their offense. I look at Alabama; they're so explosive on the outside. Mac Jones has been so smart with the football, and I just can't envision another performance defensively like we saw last week. So I'm going to lean towards Alabama, but I expect it to be a classic, Joey, because I think Georgia can at least match up physically with Alabama, unlike most teams.
I am really looking forward to Alabama's offense going against Georgia's defense. If we could just get that scrimmage the entire time, and if Georgia gets a couple stops, give them some points. If Alabama scores, give them some points. That is going to be one of the best matchups we'll get in college football all season long, regardless of who's playing, because Georgia's defense is at a championship level with Alabama slinging the ball around. I do believe Alabama is going to win this football game. It'll be interesting to see if their defense can rebound. This is a different style of offense to Georgia they're going against, but I expect Alabama to win.
All right, it's a clean sweep. I've got Alabama as well, but we'll see. Again, strength on strength, a top defense trying to slow down that tight offense, which has quite simply just rolled. Still to come, though, let's talk about another defense that hasn't had its way. Quite the contrary for the LSU Tigers. They, too, struggling on D. And Coach O says it's time to make things simple. We'll break down what needs to change for LSU coming up. Welcome back to College Football Live. Breaking news this afternoon, the University of Florida has been forced to pause all team activities. That's including football, of course, after 5 players test positive for the coronavirus. That puts this weekend's game against LSU in question. Again, Florida shutting down all athletic activities, at least for right now. In 3 games, that's the most in program history. Here's Coach O on what has to change.
On defense, not a very good performance. We had a long meeting yesterday about communication, about missed singles, about all kinds of stuff. And I'll just put it on the coaches. That's all that is. I'm not going to put it on the Vanvo to simplify, make sure that our players can do it. I don't care if we have to play one defense or one coverage. Play it right, do whatever we need to do, put our athletes in a good position and let them make plays.
Look, Joey, there was no question this was not the LSU team of last year. There was personnel change, there were players change, so many things. But what do you make of Coach O saying quite simply they need to simplify this defense?
I think anybody that's played before has had those weeks where you go into a game and you look absolutely terrible and your coaches, there's nothing else to say. I mean, all you can say is, hey, we got to make this easier, because clearly they don't understand what we're coaching them. Clearly, they had no idea that when that guy was running down the center of the field, that somebody should have went and covered him. There's not a whole lot to say. Those are the kind of weeks, Greg, when you have a bad game and you're just hoping that you don't have to watch the film with the coaches. You're hoping they're so mad that they say, screw it, we're not going to watch it, we're going to move on to next week, because that's just how bad it was.
I was always trying to push for more in the playbook. I wanted to play slow. I wanted to think my way through the game. But in all seriousness, it is one of those things where coach is going to go out and publicly defend his players and say, hey, we as coaches, it's on us. We got to do a better job of putting them in position. But guys, if you watch the tape, that's on the players. Like, busts are on the players. And it's one thing if they don't understand the concepts, but it's not like, and if I went back and I looked through it, it's not like they're running anything that's like insanely exotic. It's actually relatively simple. Now, what I looked at, and I think they're trying to do maybe a little bit too much to try to create a pass rush, to try to create some imbalance, but I don't know, man. I think the players need to step up their level of focus, and also at the same time, the coverage, we're talking about having secondary players that are among the best in college football, Derek Stingley in particular. Like, those guys should be just put in man coverage. Like, if you're talking about just running one defense, hey, we're going to run man coverage, and we're going to have to figure something out if a guy crosses the field, because against Mississippi State, we ran man, guys cross field, and we had no answer for it. So we got to have a couple change-ups, but for the most part, the players need to answer the challenge. Look, there needs to be a sense of pride. They cannot be excuses. I know that there were a lot of guys that were on that team last year that are no longer there. Who's going to take ownership? Who's going to lead? Because this team is far too talented to be at 1-2 right now, given the fact that they lost to 2 teams that are significantly less talented than them. So it's a problem, but at the same time, Coach Orgeron's faced these problems in the past head on and has got them fixed in his time in Baton Rouge.
Listen, the bar is high as Baton Rouge. I mean, we knew this was not the team from last year. Nevertheless, they are the defending national champions, and the expectations are high. Of course, they are always high in that part of the world. Still to come, speaking of expectations, is it possible that Clemson's Travis Etienne might be the most underappreciated player in college football? Wait until you hear the legends he compared to. We'll talk about that when this week's Ultimate Performance, presented by BMW. Travis Etienne, the senior back, had 149 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground as number 1 Clemson dispatched Miami 42-17. But having said that, with all the talk about his quarterback and everything else, Clemson, Joey, is it possible we are underappreciating Travis Etienne?
I do think it's possible that some people are, but I know I watch film, and Greg, I'm sure you watch film. So you can't watch Clemson film without thinking how terrific of a running back he is. He is a two-time ACC Offensive Player of the Year, so he's getting the awards, but he is outstanding, and I know I appreciate him.
I think he is obviously Robin to Trevor Lawrence's Batman, and it's not right. The guy's unbelievable. Just get him the ball in space, and he's going to do special things with it. He's so fast. He's so electric. He does a great job of contributing in all facets of the game. He's one of my favorite players in college football, and I hope he gets all the recognition he deserves before we say goodbye and he makes a ton of money at the next level.
Listen, his coach is doing his part. We know Dabo is not afraid of those lofty comparisons, i.e. Deshaun Watson, but he compared Etienne to one Walter Payton. That's pretty good company. We'll see you tomorrow, 5 o'clock Eastern on ESPN.